Thank you for choosing to come to my presentation. Thank you to organizers and all the Nicholases, and especially this Nicholas, because I think when he saw like feature flags, he's like, oh yes, because he likes legacy code bases. And feature flags, it's like something you find in a large code base and you have to deal with it, but it's not something you see like usually talked about at like a meetup or a conference. So I'm really excited to be here and talk about feature flags and end-to-end testing. Before I do that, I just want to put this slide on. The climate crisis is here, it's urgent. Right now, Iran is moving their capital, Tehran, because they ran out of water after many years of severe drought. If you think you can move 15 million people, city easily, you're out of your mind. So it's affecting not our children, it's affecting us. Luckily, the world that can solve climate crisis, and we have all the technical solutions, just political, it's actually better. So you can change your life, it's easy, well, it's something you can do. But the most important is to join an organization and vote and have political power. So lots of organizations in every city are trying to solve climate crisis. So it's not very bleak, but we have to act. About myself, I'm used to be computer vision, C, C++ person, and then kind of moved through C# into the front end and CoffeeScript. And now I mostly do end-to-end testing, and I have a lot of open source projects and blog posts, because if I don't code something and write and describe it, I'll forget. And it's very frustrating when you're like, I know how to do this, I've done it, and I don't remember how to do this, especially if I've done it a long time ago. And I do have even online courses where I post end-to-end testing advice, and I do have a monthly newsletter. It's mostly about Cypress, but every December I make an advent calendar where every day I send like a little short thing, and this year is going to be Cypress and Playwright, showing how to write, a little piece of testing code that does the same thing in both, right? And you can like make up your mind. So subscribe, it's absolutely free. Everything I do is free, including this presentation. And no matter how, thank you. No matter how much Nicholas wants to bribe me, I was like, no, I have to be fair. Okay, day to day, I work at Mercari US. It's online marketplace. Think like Craigslist or eBay on steroids. Anything that you no longer use, you can easily sell. And I believe it's a circular economy. It's actually better for all of us, and especially in this economy. We do a lot of testing. So Mercari US specifically hired me to revamp and make their web testing work. Over the 4 years, we actually done it. We consider our web testing our strong suite. And I've done a lot of presentations, but specific to large organizational testing, not just like individual thing, but what you can do at your organization. Agenda for today, I'm going to talk about feature flags and the testing challenges they present. I'm going to finish with some words of wisdom, and after that, only if you're a good audience, you'll get lunch. Okay? And who decides if you're good or not? Individually, Nicholas and me. Okay, so if I see anyone yawning or using laptops, no lunch for you. The slides, I'm going to put the link at the end as well. So the slides are public. But I'm going to start with pretty typical situation. Imagine you or your company, you're sitting around and you have amazing to-do MVC. It's the best to-do MVC in the world. You have millions of paying customers. And what do you do next? You say, well, I need to add social features. Right? I need to add maybe liking tasks, maybe commenting on other people's tasks. And you can be a cowboy and you can just jump in and start doing it, right? Who would do that, right? I mean, obviously people need comments, right? And liking, but if you work for a slightly more mature organization, the first question you might like, what are you talking about? Like, who needs that? What are you even thinking? Because what you think in your head might be different from how I understand it. So maybe nobody needs it, right? Maybe let's not announce it and then work on that. Once we have initial prototype, can you actually show it to a couple of users, collect the feedback, and decide if you want to release it or if we have to tweak it and maybe release something else? And if we're a successful and large corporation or a successful business, can we release something, and if it doesn't go well and it keeps breaking and maybe breaks other features, maybe we can kind of hide it right away and maybe fix the things. And what I'm talking about is risk. Any successful program has features that must work. And just trying to implement a new feature, even if it's small and seems innocuous, might break existing paying customers, and you're taking risk with development. So to solve it, people invented feature flags. It's a way for you to control your app or software, right, using a third-party service where you can turn features on and off. An important thing here is I call it real time. It doesn't have to be real time. Yes, some services implement WebSockets and they can actually give you, this feature flag is now off. But the most important thing, you want to control your software without rebuild, redeploy, reinstall. Because who's going to reinstall the software if you need just to tweak something else? In software for the web, it could look something like this, where I'm using Flagsmith, a third-party service. It's pretty popular. It's pretty simple. You initialize the client, you give an environment ID. This is your project ID, right, for your particular app. And then in your front end, you can say, okay, show the layout, and the dark mode will be controlled by a toggle called dark mode. So it goes to that feature service and says, what's the value of this feature flag? Is it on or off? Because if it's on, then the dark mode is on. If it's off, it's off. You can have multiple feature flags for the same design. For example, you can try version 2 of your UI design. You can decide if you want to show the chat widget based on a feature flag. So you can flip the chat on and off. So this would be very simple on-off feature toggles. True or false? Should I show it or not? And this is the demo that the Flagsmith shows on the website. On the left, you see the UI. That's the admin panel on flagsmith.com. This is you as a developer. That's where you can click the toggles to enable them remotely. On the right, you see the actual web application and how it looks in real time when the admin or developer flips those toggles. So for example, you can, let's start from the beginning, enable the chat, and all of a sudden the chat widget appears. You can enable design version 2, and you can enable the dark mode, each one individually. So pretty powerful. Under the hood, usually you have Boolean toggles on and off. Both are simple. You can have a feature, but with a value. So for example, what's the greeting that I want to show to the users? So you can say get value greeting. If there is no such feature, if it's turned off, it will just return false, so undefined. But you can provide a fallback value. And I would always suggest provide fallback, right? What's the greeting? Well, you don't want to show hello undefined, right? Because that looks bad. More complex feature flags include variations. So something in between or multiple values for each feature, and you can decide which variation to show. Launch Darkly does it by default. They are kind of famous for their feature flag features, so to speak. So for example, if I have a feature flag called greeting, I can have a variation that's like casual, hello. Maybe I have a formal value, how do you do? And maybe once on vacation, I can show variation aloha. And you can use feature flags for lots of things. Experimenting, right? Put it behind the feature flag, try it out, collect feedback. If you decide that you don't want to proceed, you just kill the whole thing, but users never even see it. Incremental development, where you release parts of your software step by step, and one step could be in development, while other parts could be released. Collecting feedback, where you show your feature to the users, collect feedback, turn it off, everything is safe. And safe releases, where you can do a rollout, where you say, serve a new feature, a new design, to, let's say, 5% of the users. Let's see if there's any negative feedback or errors or crashes. So if 5% don't suffer anything, then release it to 10%, 20%, until you reach 100% rollout. Kill switches, where you can say, okay, by default, let's say we'll use email system, we'll send notifications to the new users. Hey, welcome to our To-Do app. If you find problems, you can just flip a switch and you no longer send any emails because there's something wrong with the email system. Experimenting, where you show maybe 50% of users one design, and our 50% another design, collect feedback, collect stats, and you decide which design is better. And of course, any kind of app can use feature flags. I'm going to show web apps, but you can think of backend or mobile apps using the same approach. A couple of things that we do at Mercari. We had a big project 2 years ago where we looked at all the hundreds of feature flags, and we're like, okay, it's a mess. Let's maybe design engineering policy. And one of the first things was like, let's just have consistent names for those flags. Otherwise, people just name them whatever, usually cryptically. And once the person leaves the company, nobody has an idea what's happening. So we kind of decided, okay, type area name. So example would be enable UI chat. Maybe hide social logins. So from a couple of words, you understand what is the type of feature flag, what is it related to, and what specific feature it controls. Mark temporary flags, because people create flags that they think, well, I'll just experiment and then I'll flip it to off and then I'll remove it. That never happens, obviously. So at least other people have to understand that experimenting with social features, that flag is supposed to be temporary. Things for rolling out UI chat, once you roll it out, that flag clearly has served its purpose. It probably should be removed. My advice, a lot of like Flagsmith, LaunchDarkly, they support tagging feature flags. So don't put, in the name of a feature flag, like -web or -mobile, right? Just have a flag and tag it, which platform it relates to. And another thing that's related, make sure to put in the description of a flag maybe a link back to the original Jira story, because I guarantee that everyone who creates a feature flag at some point will leave a company, and with that knowledge might be gone, and nobody knows what the flag XYZ is coming from or what are the circumstances. Okay, usually, let's say in our company, we test everything in dev, and then we, if everything goes well, it goes into production. So feature flags, they do support the notion of environments. So for example, you can have a feature like show UI chat. It might be enabled in dev while we're working on it. In production, the same flag might be set to false because the feature is not ready yet. But we assume that at some point, once we release it to production, that flag will kind of migrate its value. In our opinion, the best dev environment would mimic the production as close as possible. So there is no discrepancy. So feature flags are extremely powerful. They change how the app behaves, creating nightmare for end-to-end testing. Because if you think about it, end-to-end tests, they love very simple, consistent, deterministic path. I'm going to this page, I see this button, I click on this button, I go to the second page, I see this text, I click on another link, and I go to the third page every time this test runs. But feature flags, they allow you to do something else. They allow you, I'm going to this page, I click on the button, oops, now I'm going to design 2 page that might show something else completely. Now the test doesn't know what to do really. And maybe from the second step, it has 3 other paths, depending on the features flags the application can take. The worst situation is a test failing once in a while, once couple days. And when you look at the feature flag and you see, oh, this is a rollout feature flag, it's a percentage. I'm going to serve the new version of a page, a new version of behavior in 5% of users. So one time out of 20. So the test goes there, and once out of 20, it's a completely different page from what it expected and what it is, unless you use AI. And by the way, this presentation has 0 AI content, so I know you're expecting at the end a slide. No, no, I actually finished presentation. I was thinking maybe I should put AI somewhere. but I don't have a case for it. So one other bad thing. So we're thinking, okay, 3 features, each one on off. So it's 2 different states plus 2 different states plus 2 different states. But that's incorrect because each state could be affected by all other states. You cannot add number of states, you have to multiply them. Feature A on off, second feature comes in, now you have 4 different states. Feature C comes in, now you have 8 different states. So for example, in the example from Flagsmith, this is just a screenshot from a video. They were showing chat widget and they were showing dark mode. Right now, chat is on, dark mode is on. Notice everything has a dark mode except for chat. They completely forgot that the chat now is also affected by the dark mode. Okay, so did anyone test the chat in dark mode? Probably no, right? Everyone forgot about it. So this slide is mostly for my son who is present. Anytime you add a feature and it just doubles the complexity or doubles the number of states in your application, that's exponential growth. This is the scariest thing in computer science, right? Including, teams. And imagine anytime you add one more person to a dev team, it actually slows you down by a factor of 2. Well, the feature flags, they double the number of possible states, double the number of permutations and combinations of all possible things. So imagine this is a typical test at Mercari. I'm testing communication between the seller and the buyer. They go through the chat. Now imagine someone comes in and says, well, now you have a feature flag that controls if chat is even visible or not. And now all those tests have to think, do I see a chat widget? Well, if yes, I'll do my thing. But if not, what do I do now, right? And all the tests now have to think about 2 possible situations. So there is a tug of war between the power that the feature flags give you and the tests that need simplicity and the same thing. So how do we solve this? I have 3 solutions. Obviously, any presentation needs to show 3 things. Otherwise, it doesn't even work. But the first one is what I call total control. Okay. If I look at the feature flags, usually the first step is for each platform when it loads is to go to the Flagsmith or launch directory and say, give me all the feature flags for my environment ID or project. And then maybe depending on feature flags, I can show something else. So in this case, I'm just showing when it's loading, and then depending on the feature A, I'm showing feature A or not showing it. And this is how it looks. So I have my page, and the flag is off, and it says not showing feature A. And if I flip the switch at Flagsmith and I reload the page, well, now the same thing is showing feature A. And if I'm observing my browser, I will see at the beginning when the page loads, it goes to API flags endpoint at Flagsmith. And what does it do? It simply grabs a giant array of feature flags. It's nothing but just an array, right? The feature flags, they're not complicated. I literally have to, at the beginning, go and say, give me all the feature flags. And it returns it using an API REST endpoint. So one thing we can do from our end-to-end testing, if you've ever seen Cypress, in Cypress, you can detect a network call. So I'm doing intercept, API v1 flags. And for example, I can delay it by 1 second. This is another important thing. If you use feature flags, but period, while they're loading, what does the user see? Do they see everything? Do they see some flash of content? Do they see a message? So in this case, I'm testing that it's showing initializing, and then it shows that initializing message is gone. So this looks like this, where there is 1 second delay introduced by the test runner when it's slowing down that get flags call, and now I can confirm that the user is seeing something like initializing message. Again, the response is just a JSON object. I can go to my network tab in DevTools. I can grab the whole response, the whole JSON array, and I can save it as a picture file in my project where I can see each feature, and I can see if it's enabled or not. Now I'm saving this as a JSON file. And now, instead of just observing or slowing down that network call, I can say anytime the page is making intercept API v1 flags call and return that big JSON file. So instead of going to a real third-party service, I can say, no, here's just send back that JSON. So now all the flags will be the same every time you run the software. So if feature A is off because it's off in the JSON, then every time my test runs, it will see not showing feature A. Okay, so we completely removed that third-party service. We always respond with the same JSON, which is nice, but not ideal, obviously, because then anytime a feature flag is added or changed, the behavior needs to change as well, and I probably need to re-download that picture. So every test is affected. So a second approach, slightly more finesse, would be selective control. Instead of stubbing everything and telling each feature flag what it should be, instead we can intercept that call. We can allow it to go to the backend or to a third-party flag service. And once we get result back, which is just an array or feature flags, we can find the feature flag we care about. In this case, by name, feature A, and then we can say enable true. So no matter what happens in the outside world, we only care about our little feature flag, and we're setting the value explicitly. So the test will always see feature A turn on. So we removed all sorts of unpredictability. Okay, how are we doing? Everyone's good? Who wants to just skip it and go to early lunch? Nicholas, is food is here? No? I don't smell anything. Okay, I promise, if you behave, I'm going to let you out 5 minutes early so you're first in line to get, because you don't want to be behind that group, because they'll grab everything. Okay, so those two approaches, control all the flags, just stop them, or control each flag individually, seems like a good idea, but what we found is to be very unpredictable. Okay, for a couple of reasons. One, we're stopping the initial load, right, on the page. What if a user goes from one page to another, right? The web application probably will make another call to load the flag. So unless you're ready to always intercept and always modify the feature flags, you might miss it. Another thing is a feature flag might not be just related to the front end. You might control the user behavior on the back end as well. We are stubbing only the front end. And so what happens when the user clicks the button for feature A, it goes to the back end, and the back end says, well, feature A is disabled. What do you mean, right? So there might be differences, and just stubbing on the front end might not be enough. And we also controlled a single flag in selective control approach. And flags might actually interact with each other. And you might control one part of a page, but the second or other parts of a page might be controlled by other flags outside of your control. And so, for example, if you control the chat, all of a sudden, version 2 design is turned on, and everything changes, and you get affected by that. So what we arrived right now at Mercari is something we call per user control. So not per flag and not total control, but per user control. And it has two principles. Principle 1, do not change feature flags. Don't touch them. If you touch them, you're fired. No, we basically say on dev platform, because production is different, on dev platform where we test it, do not change feature flags because you're affecting everyone else and all the end-to-end tests. So have a good reason before you flip a flag or remove a flag or even add a flag. Like, you're still allowed to do it. We're not, unreasonable people. We just break your legs, but But we try to say, okay, keep it the same. And if you need to change things, for example, if you're trying to collect feedback on a particular feature, instead of just flipping the switch for everyone, only flip the switch per user. All these platforms allow you to control a feature for a particular user ID or session ID. So here's how it looks in practice. So this is my greeting, again, a feature with variations. Variation 1 was casual, hello. Variation 2 was formal, how do you do? And vacation was aloha. And at the bottom of the same page, by default, we are serving just the casual greeting, hello. Under the targeting, right now, we have an empty list of individual users. So by default, everyone will get a casual hello. Okay, so in our test, when we load the, in this case, LaunchDarkly SDK, when we ask for all the feature flags, we also pass some kind of unique user ID. So it could be a logged in user ID, could be a browser session ID, right? But it has to be some unique way of identifying this user is logged in. And the call to a feature service might look exactly the same. By default, it's casual. It returns hello. Everyone gets the hello, right? There are no special rules just yet. But then we can go to the LaunchDarkly experiment on launchdarkly.com, and we can add the user ID right there in the targeting input box, right? And we can say, for that user, give them something else, give them a formal variation for that user only. Now, will this affect end-to-end testing? No, because end-to-end tests use other users, not that specific one. So they will still see the same casual hello. But if we run on that particular user, if we log in, we'll see how do you do. And that's the whole principle behind our approach. Instead of stabbing at the browser and controlling the flag, we say, okay, when we log in, for that particular user, whoever logged in, do this specific feature flag. The one we care. Everything else will be kind of locked, will be the same. But this feature flag might be different, and it's not going to affect anyone else. And just to simplify this, I wrote a little plugin called Cypress LaunchDarkly Control, because I have to write something. Otherwise, how can I justify my salary? I have to code. It's all open source. You initialize in your testing project that plugin, and you give it a project key and authentication token, and you're controlling everything on a third-party service, right? You're completely not using the browser intercept stub files. You just go directly to LaunchDarkly API. And so a typical test looks like this, where right at the beginning of a test, before we actually visit the page, before we do anything meaningful, we can say, set the feature flag for user, and you give a key of a feature flag, feature A, enable UI chat, and you give a user ID. So could be browser session ID or logged in user ID, and you set the variation. So feature flags, they don't use names to set it. They use zero-based index. Variation 0, variation 1, variation 2. So once we set it, we get this, where the test runs, and it will always see the same casual user, right? We set exactly the feature flag that we care about, and we see exactly what the test is supposed to check, and it checks it, and nothing should be affecting it. And if we want to switch and see how the formal greeting looks like, we just set the feature flag variation for that user to 1, and we check that it contains how do you do world, and it always runs the same way. And this could be 2 separate tests, one for casual users, one for formal users. and we keep them separate because we're testing two different types of behavior. Last one, I'm on vacation. Fine, I'll set variation index 2, and I will see aloha world. One important point is we have to clean up things. We haven't found launch darkly to slow down, even if you add hundreds or even thousands of user IDs. I think they're pretty smart. They know that it's possible to increase the number of individual users that the rules target. But as a rule, we always clean up after all the tests, saying, okay, this user ID, just remove it from all the targeting. And it's kind of fun because if you go to the launch darkly UI and you look at the feature flag and the tests are running on CI or locally, you will see those IDs pop in and out. Like you see, okay, test is running. Okay, now it's gone. It's cleaned up. So you see them right there. And the system works. The system is great. But it has one weak point. Does anyone want to guess what's the weak point of this beautiful approach to testing feature flag is? Setup, okay, I hear setup. Various combinations, great guess. Single point of the failure could be, yeah, because we're relying on third-party service and we all control. All great guesses. You all deserve lunches, but that's a good guess. No, that seems to be fine. We clean them up later. Even we remove the users as a cron job later. What we use, yes. Monitoring for production, okay. Doesn't affect us with test in dev, right? So the production should not affect us. All great guesses. Unfortunately, the right answer is the right answer for all the questions about what is wrong with software, and that's humans. Okay. But humans are the weak point of this whole setup because I said the system should be locked, right? All the feature flags should stay the same because you're affecting something else. But test will control its feature flags that it cares about. Unfortunately, product team might say, oh, I just flipped this flag just really quickly and I forgot to flip it back, right? Or someone might say, oh, I was just like expanding the meaning of this flag. So we modify it, maybe we did like by default, instead of casual, we start displaying vacation, aloha, right? So people always do that, and it's fine, right? It's a dev environment. We can't just say never touch dev environment. I think it's better to set it in production, right? Control it strictly. But in dev environment, you have it, right? You sometimes have to experiment. We found one. It's not perfect solution, but it allows us to quickly debug any problems that are caused. So once in a while, when all the tests are green and passing, we're going to run a command, again, from that Cypress LG control plugin, and we'll say, for this particular project, for this particular environment, grab all the feature flags right now as they are, all the values. It's kind of similar to like intercepting a network call, but we don't intercept network call because now we have user IDs. So we just do it from command line and say, just give me all the feature flags and one giant JSON file. We save a JSON file with our repo. Okay, we commit it. It's fine. It's not going to change very often. It's fine. And then if we run tests, right before we run the test, we do the diff. We say, get me all the feature flags right now, diff it against the JSON file in my repo, and just output any changes. Like, we're not going to stop the testing. We're not going to stop the deployment. We just want to know about them, okay? And what it looks like on GitHub Actions, for example, in addition to the terminal output, we also put it in a summary color-coded. So if we run a bunch of end-to-end tests and something suddenly fails, we're like, before I do anything, let me just take a look at the summary and see if any feature flags that might potentially affect this test were flipped or changed the value. Again, yes?
Why not failing the test?
Because they might not actually affect anything, right? We don't.
It's not affecting by luck because you have two flags.
Yeah.
Cancel each other.
I completely agree. So this is not like a decision. It's not like immediate root cause of a failed test. But for example, if you see the test failed for the chat, and when you see the enable UI chat flag flip to off, you're like, well, maybe those two things are related. But my chat test and my chat flag are both different, right? Again, this just gives us more information. If I had a slide about AI, this is where I would say, AI, how likely that this change in a feature flag and this particular failure in my tests are related? Where would be? But for now, it's just like diagnostic for someone debugging the problem to kind of come in and say, okay, might be, right? Good? Excellent observation. Again, it could be a correlation, not causation. So having said that, this is our mechanism. This is how we now treat our features and tests at Mercari. A feature starts as an experiment. Let's add social features. The feature is opt-in, right? So we just show it per user. We don't show it on dev environment to everyone. And if it's an experiment, we don't write any tests because we don't know if the feature is going anywhere. Once it progresses from experiment to prototype, where we really want to see if we can implement this, the feature is still opt-in for users, right? So we don't show it to everyone, but maybe we'll write a couple of tests just kind of to look with behavior, just to see what it is. And both end-to-end tests all control the feature flag explicitly. They set the feature flag at the beginning of a test, and then they go through a happy path, for example. Once the feature reached, I would say, an acceptance, we're like, okay, we give up. Yeah, we'll have to implement this. We call it an alternative. The users are still opt-in, and for tests, now we have to write more tests. Okay, and all the new tests, they still opt-in into that feature explicitly, and we start updating the old tests that test the previous version of software to opt-in to the old behavior of that feature, right? Because sometimes we don't know if we actually will go with a feature, and sometimes we'll roll in. So it's nice if both tests run at the same time, but means you need to opt-in and you need to opt-in. And then we do the switch. So for a switch, we set for all the users the new behavior. The new tests now can remove that opt-in because that's the new default behavior. Any old tests would still survive. In case we have to roll back, they are still opt-in into the old variation. And finally, when the feature is released, it becomes the new default. It's default for all the users. We do the feature cleanup on our testing stuff, right? The new tests were already by default, so they don't need to be updated, but the old tests need to be removed because we no longer need them. And the most important thing, you take that feature flag that you use to kind of control it, and you move it far, far away and hide it so nobody can find it and it can't hurt anyone anymore. Okay. Last 3 pieces of personal wisdom before we go to lunch. You might think, oh, I'm just gonna not pay for third-party service. I'm not gonna pay Flagsmith. I'm not gonna pay LaunchDarkly. I'm just gonna do my own feature, system. How hard can it be? Just don't do it, right? It's the same people who do their own CI, do their own security. They all like to work on something that doesn't pay the bills instead of working on something that does pay the bills, right? You're the company, unless you work for LaunchDarkly, you should use it as a service, right? And not make your own things. Like the taxi company is not building their own taxis, right? They just buy or lease them. Most important thing, I would say, after watching feature flags like explode to hundreds and hundreds of feature flags, is like just retire them. Have a time limit. Like this is experiment. We're gonna decide by the next quarter, and whatever we decide, we're just gonna remove a feature flag. We either go with it and it becomes a feature, or we retire a flag because we're not gonna do it. Just like let's not have hundreds of feature flags that are already obsolete, but might still affect some behavior. We removed hundreds of feature flags, and right now our set. Okay, I have to rush. They're going to lunch. Okay. hundreds of feature flags could be removed safely. New features, instead of just saying, here's a new feature, I'm going to show it by default. No, it should be opt-in until you decide that this is the new default behavior. This will be helpful to your tests and to your normal users. Okay, we're not going to see something unexpected. I wrote a couple of blog posts about this, but docs for Flagsmith and Launch Darkly are also excellent because they explain their philosophy and what is possible. So I highly recommend reading their docs as well. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. The slides are public. Thank you, everyone.